Welcome to Direct Approach, a bi-weekly podcast hosted by Wayne Moorehead, filled with timely insights, fresh perspectives, and actionable takeaways from your direct selling executive peers to help fuel the growth and evolution of your business. Are you focusing on the right activities to drive real growth? In the latest episode of Direct Approach, Wayne Moorehead sits down with Stephen Whitwell, VP of Field Development for North America and Europe at NeoLife International, to discuss how redefining winning, strengthening field leadership, and making sponsoring a priority led to some of the company's biggest enrollment years. Stephen shares his proven strategies for driving field momentum, overcoming resistance to change, and building a retention-first culture that fuels long-term success. But before we begin, we'd like to thank this episode's sponsor, iPayout. Does your growing direct sales organization need a more powerful payments platform? iPayout is your ultimate partner, offering tailored solutions for seamless global payouts and efficient management. With support for over 180 currencies and an all-encompassing global tax suite, iPayout ensures transparency and control on a single, robust platform. Streamline your payouts by offering more options to your sellers, empowering your business to thrive on a global stage. Choose iPayout, where innovation meets efficiency. Now let's welcome your host, Wayne Moorehead, and his guest, Stephen Whitwell.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DSN's Direct Approach podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Moorehead, and today's guest has spent his career driving sales and field growth at some of the most dynamic and well-known direct selling companies. I'm excited to welcome Stephen Whitwell, Vice President of Field Development for North America and Europe at NeoLife International. Stephen, thank you so much for being on Direct Approach.
Hey, Wayne, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I really enjoyed your DSU talk, and I'm excited to jump in a little bit deeper. But before we go too deep, can you share just a little bit about the path that led you into the direct selling channel?
Yes, well, I'll say, my story is very similar to probably a lot of the distributors in the field, in a sense that I found direct selling by accident. I didn't grow up hoping, wishing, or dreaming to be a part of direct selling. Actually, in the family that I grew up in, and I guess where I was, I'd never even heard of direct sales. I didn't know what it was in when I got into my 20s or anything along those lines. My background is actually mostly in finance and accounting. And as I was finishing up my master's in accounting degree in the Dallas, Texas area, I happened to get to know and build a great professional relationship with the chief financial officer of a direct selling company. And that company was really starting to grow, and they were wanting to add people to their staff. And specifically, they were looking for people to bring on in the field development side of the business that they could bring in and kind of groom and mold into the company's culture and philosophies and all of that. And so I really took a chance. I went on an interview at the company, and I fell in love with what the company was about, what the industry was doing for people. And so right out of graduate school back in 2011, I started in direct selling with zero experience, background, or knowledge. And now I'm in my 14th year, and I can't imagine doing anything else.
Oh, I love that. It is amazing how each of us finds our way into direct selling and how often we're exposed to it without even realizing it. I grew up in a house on so many well-known direct selling company products, not knowing the business side of it, and then introduced and fell in love just as you did. I also find it interesting how many people start out in, it might be finance or accounting or even the legal side, and find their way to the sales side or the field development side within direct selling. And I love having all those different perspectives. I think it makes the companies in the fields that much better. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. While we've touched on field development in some of the other podcasts, we've never really done a deep dive. And so I know for myself and all of us, we're really excited to learn from your experience and your expertise over these last 14 years. So just to set the table for all of us, can you talk a little bit about the role of field development in today's direct selling?
Absolutely. And, when I think of field development and how it plays in a direct selling company, I can kind of, I guess, give the list of things I think that a field development team and personnel should be responsible for and should drive inside the organization. But as an analogy that I've always seen, I don't watch NASCAR. I'm not a big NASCAR fan, but this is how I've always viewed field development, is that our field, the distributors, they're the ones in the car, on the track, running or in the race. And things happen in our field, things happen on the NASCAR track because of the driver in the car. And I've always viewed field development as we're kind of the pit crew and the crew chief. Our job is to get that car as best aligned as possible for the driver to do what it does, and making sure it has the gas, the engine, the technology, the tools, the fuel, and all of that. So I've always kind of viewed myself and my team in field development as we're the pit crew, we're the crew chief to help our field execute at what they do. So in terms of like practical, I mean, that really for our company that I work in, field development really is there to drive their sales strategy of the organization. So, all of our sales planning for the year, our sales approach that we take into the marketplace. We also lead for, in regards to our organization, the training of our field when it comes to, leadership training, business training, onboarding training for our field. Events. We take the driver of putting on and hosting and organizing all the events throughout the year, whether it's our big conventions, our leadership school type events, our virtual events throughout the year, our weekly events that we do with our field virtually. I think the next piece of field development I think is huge is really working on and creating incentives for the field. And making sure that incentives are well placed, they're well timed, they have the right qualifications, but they're also being promoted and driven consistently in the field day in and day out. I also think recognition is another massive part of what field development drives, is the weekly recognition, monthly, of course, the annual recognition. And then I think the last couple of pieces would be kind of, I would call it field relations. I feel like, we're the ones that are building those relationships with the field leaders, getting to know them. And they're the ones that, they look at us and we can provide trust for them in the company. But then also we're there that if there are any dynamics at play in the field and there's, challenges or personnel issues between distributors, that's where field development has to come in and make sure that we keep a great culture in the field and great relationships. And then last but not least, I would say driving leadership in the field is, casting a vision of where the company is going, keeping the field focused on where that vision is and pointing people to that vision. And then, as we are doing all of those things, I also feel like field development is sort of the eyes and the ears of the company. We're on the ground with our distributors every day. And so we hear what's working, what's not working, where are the challenges, what can they use, where can we help them the most? So I feel like all of that, it's a lot, but I feel like all of that encompasses, a field development department and role in today's direct selling.
Absolutely. It is such a critical role and organization within the companies. And I know we look to the field and especially the sales leaders as they're the experts in what they do. But there is so much from the corporate side, from managing those relationships to finding those best practices to helping carry them, across teams and even across markets, as I know we're going to talk a little bit about. And I love the pit crew analogy. I haven't heard that one before, but I think that's exactly what your team does and the role of that to really help optimize and support and grow the field. It is such a critical role. And especially in other channels that might be marketing driven and sales supported, we're the exact reverse. We're sales driven with marketing and all of these other functions supporting those efforts. So field development really is kind of the tip of the spear and the foundation for our business.
And I'll just,
go ahead.
But I just want to add one last piece that I think is so important that I've learned over 14 years in this industry is that, one of the great things about building a business in the field as a distributor that we talk about and we promote is the flexibility that it creates for you as you build this business. And with that means that, sometimes leaders in the field are not always what I would call a constant. Maybe they're in a season of life where they need to take a step back or this or that. I also feel like field development has to be the constant for the field to ensure that everyone has an onboarding opportunity, everyone's staying communicated with, being recognized, and where you hope the field leaders are taking the responsibility to onboard people and train them and recognize and drive activity. Sometimes that's not the case. And so we have to be the constant 24/7, 365 days a year for the organization to ensure people have leaders. And I think that's a big role too.
It is. That's a really important point. And thank you for making that. I hadn't thought of it that way. But you're right. There's various levels of support throughout organizations. And then even within that, there are seasons, as you mentioned, where people are going to be more involved or less involved. So I think that's really incredible. Again, just from a strategic standpoint, to be that great constant, I think is a really important distinction. So one of the things that really has impressed me is even after, well, that NeoLife has been in business for more than 60 years, but that even in the last few years, you've seen some of the highest enrollment and sponsoring years in the company's history. Can you share a few of the key factors that are helping to drive this?
Yeah. So first of all, as setting the context for, NeoLife, as you mentioned, we're in our 67th year of being in business, which is a fact that we're very proud of, that we've had over six decades of a track record of helping people with their health and wellness and providing a business opportunity and having business partners around the world. And that legacy really is a part of our culture. I mean, we have leaders in NeoLife that have been with us for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30, 40, and I'm not exaggerating. I know leaders that have built their businesses for 50 years now, and it is remarkable. So with that being said, one of the things that took place when I joined the NeoLife team back in the beginning of 2022, and it's just something that I've always been passionate about in this industry, is I was taught throughout my career, and really every data point that I've ever looked at all comes back to businesses rise and fall in our industry so much on sponsoring and recruiting, and it's kind of mathematics in a way, but addition has to be greater than subtraction for you to have growth. And the addition in our business is, do we have more people using products today, more people pursuing the opportunity today, than are leaving the products and leaving the opportunity? And if we have more people this month added to our company than are stopping, there's growth. And if that happens month after month, then you are building a growing organization. So I've always looked at it as addition and subtraction is where our business falls. And the addition piece is sponsoring, always having new people getting started on products, always having new people pursuing the opportunity. And that addition needs to be greater than the subtraction, those who are stopping using products and stop pursuing the opportunity, because attrition is a real in every business. And so with that being said, one of the things that I was focused on when I got here is, hey, if we don't do anything else at NeoLife, over the next few years, we're going to win the addition game. We are going to win the addition game. We are going to have a focus that we are going to have more new people getting started on our products, more people hopefully engaging in our opportunity this year than any year in the past. And so what we kind of did is we just turned an absolute spotlight onto that. And I will give you kind of a football analogy, since I know the Super Bowl is only a little bit away and we're in the middle of the NFL playoffs. Is, sometimes when you're playing, if you're in a sport, you kind of, as a coach, you kind of say, listen, if we don't do anything else, we're going to stop the run. Like, I don't care what happens, but we're stopping the run. And that becomes the focus. And that was for us in 2022. We said, our focus is we're going to go reach more people. And so long story short, it became the rally cry inside of our company. It became how we structured all of our incentives, how we talked to our field, how we trained them. And it became the one voice amongst the corporate team to our field. So they knew the focus and direction.
That is so powerful. And I think it's simple yet powerful and often overlooked. There's never a shortage of great ideas or great initiatives at any of our companies that are focused on growing the field, the sales, everything. But being able to, as you say, kind of shine the spotlight on one thing and align the entire company internally and externally with, I think, has such huge impact for all of our companies. I'm curious, again, as you mentioned, you've had field leaders that have been with you for multiple decades, 40, 50 years. As the company selected this as the focus, as you put it, as the focus, I'm curious, what was some of the reaction from some of the longtime field leaders? I'm not suggesting this, but, sometimes field leaders will be, they've grown successful businesses and they'll say, I know what's best. I'm going to focus my team on this. But what was their reaction to having this really laser-like focus?
What is absolutely true in any organization is that, it's never one thing that everyone needs to do. And we knew that going in. We knew that going in that, some of our field leaders' businesses, yes, they needed to bring more people in and have a focus on sponsoring. There's other teams that are already doing that great. And there's other teams, like in any organization, where that sponsoring has just kind of completely gone to the wayside, and it's not what they do any longer. So you had these different groups. And so, one of the things I'll say is that happened is, the leaders that are really engaged and active in building, they jumped right alongside us. We didn't really find any leaders who were in the game, who were building and actually working, that had any problem with this focus. So you kind of naturally had this gravitational pull of all of the key active leaders anyway, because they're in the game, they're building, they know how important sponsoring and recruiting is to the growth of their business, and how it's, probably the single best indicator of future growth is current sponsoring of new people. So we had this gravitational pull with those individuals. But then, of course, you always have in any company, you have the leaders. When all of a sudden you turn it on personal production and personal sponsoring, there's nowhere to hide any longer. And that's what happens, because it's easy for a leader to say, I'm working deep. I'm working deep. That's what I'm doing. I'm working depth. And it's, no, we're not working at all. But you like to say that to make it feel like you're working your business. And it was an easy way to hide. And, one of the things I've learned too is that one of the activities that probably takes the most effort and energy of a distributor, and it's the number one activity that if any leader could stop doing, the vast majority of direct sellers would love to stop prospecting and sponsoring and recruiting. What I've seen in direct sales is most distributors love the idea of doing trainings. Oh, they love trainings. They love doing trainings or being at trainings. They love events. They love attending events or being at events. They love the community aspect of being together with the team. They love hearing success stories, all of that. But there's one activity you could pull out that they don't love. Sometimes it's the prospecting and recruiting, because that's where the rubber meets the road in our business. That's where you have to overcome a lot of challenges. You got to overcome rejection, the opinions of others, doubts and fears, all of that. And so it's usually the first thing that I've seen in direct selling that people want to stop doing. And so what we decided we were going to do is, we're going to rally everyone around this, because it is the fundamental skill of our business, is prospecting and sponsoring. So with that being said, yes, some leaders did not love it, because they may be exposed that, they aren't really doing anything right now in their business. And that was going to be, highlighted or noted. And so what we said is it doesn't matter any pushback that we're going to get. If we're going to get it, we know the direction we're going to move in, which is we want to bring more people into our NeoLife community, our NeoLife family. And that's our mission. That's our goal. That's our focus. We want you to be with us, but we're not taking our eye off the prize, which is growing our number of customers and distributors. So we're focused on that. And so one thing I wanted to do is I wanted to get our internal team aligned on that. And I made sure to let them know we're going to get pushback. There's going to be leaders that don't love this because they're not recruiting, and they're not going to get the recognition, and they're not going to be speaking at events and those sorts of things. But we have to keep moving forward with this direction. And so we stayed true to it, even though there was some pushback.
Wow, I love that. I think that's so important. I know I'm going to go back and listen to the last 2 minutes. I encourage all of us to. What came to mind as you were speaking, again, the importance of doing the hard things. It's the Stoic philosophy. I'm a big Stoicism fan, but of the obstacle is the way. The impediment to action becomes the action, and I think that's important for all of us. Whether we're in the field or in corporate. A lot of times we're avoiding the hard work, but that's what's actually going to move the needle. And so congratulations on being able just to align the field and the corporate team there around those important key activities and key drivers. And I know one of the things you did to really help create that alignment and to raise the bar was redefine winning. And I think that's a really important concept that you talked about at DSU. Can you share a little bit more on how the company redefined what winning looked like?
Yes. So I'll kind of share a little bit about how we took this focus from a practical perspective and get more into the nuts and bolts of what did we actually do once we made this as the focus. So one of the first things that we did is we created a simple program called 3 and 30. And what it was for us is it just, we wanted to create this minimum benchmark. This is the benchmark on a monthly basis for sponsoring activity. We're going to recognize this. We're going to reward this. We're going to highlight those that are in this. We're going to do special stuff for those things. And what 3 and 30 simply is we said, hey, listen, if you personally help 3 new people get started on product in a month, you get 3 new customers or customers and distributors, combination of that in a month, then like you achieved a 3 and 30 that month. And so we became like, that's the minimum benchmark for growth in this business. That's what it looks like every month from personal production. So that's the first thing that we did is we set this monthly benchmark that we wanted to drive people towards every month. We also wanted to redefine winning in a sense of some of our field thought that like, oh, if I get 1 new customer this month, I'm winning. And what we wanted to kind of say is like, that's great. And we want to applaud you for that. But there is going to have to be more than 1 new customer added to your team or 1 new distributor added to your team on a monthly basis for growth to really occur. So we wanted to raise the standard of what winning looked like on a monthly basis when it came to sponsoring. And then I think like the second thing that we did also then is we kind of said, okay, here's also what we're going to do. Like at our next annual convention, that we have, we're going to set a metric up where, you have to have so much personal activity when it comes to new customers joining your team, new distributors joining your team personally, for you to even be considered to be a speaker on stage. And we told our field, here's one thing that we can guarantee you. Every person you hear speaking on stage at our annual convention is in the game building currently. And currently they're having success in the last year. And so you're going to hear real insights from those in the field that are getting it done right now. Not what worked 10 years ago, but what worked in the last 10 months. And so what that did is that also created some pushback when we redefined what
Sure.
it was going to be a speaker on our stage. And we even had some leaders say, well, I've always spoken at every event and I'm not coming if I don't speak. And so, you have to deal with that. And that's obviously the minority, not the majority of people, right? And you would get that in every company would have some of those type of legacy leaders that are just expected to speak. But we really wanted to show that we're putting our money where our mouth is in the sense of we're all about current production of new people coming in. And those that are doing that, you're going to be the featured speakers. We also redesigned some of our incentive trips to focus a little bit more on personal activity and personal production, which was new for NeoLife. And it was awesome because it really awoke the people who are actually building and currently getting results. And so I would just say that that's kind of how we started redefining winning in our company.
Yeah, I love that. And I know that it's not easy for all of us we know what's right sometimes from the corporate perspective or what we feel is right, and don't always act on that or have the courage to say, look, this is the new definition of winning, and helping to align everybody around that. So I'm so impressed that you and NeoLife were able to do that. I'm curious at some of these events, the big recognition or incentive trips where it wasn't just based on rank and it was based on personal activity. What was the culture like at these events? Was there a little bit of, a separation between the performers and maybe, some of the legacy leaders, or did it all come together really cohesively?
Yes. So one thing I have to do, talking about redefining winning, and I should have done it just a second ago, but I'm going to do it now, and then I'm going to dive into that question specifically. I also want to say this, and I would assume this is not just going to be for NeoLife. This would be for most companies out there. We have great people at NeoLife, just like I'm sure most companies, you have great people in the field. And one thing that even surprised us is every time we raise the standard or raise the bar of what winning looked like, the field, they raised their level of activity and they raised their own standards and they met this new bar. And that was the coolest thing. And what I think it showed for me is that when you have a great field, they're going to rise to that challenge. And our field did do that, which was really great to see. There was fear at first, that we definitely had some leaders who had fear at first. They're like, I don't know if I can do this. And I can think of a couple of leaders in my head right now. When we first started raising the bar, they immediately went to fear. But I can tell you right now, fast forward 2.5, 3 years later, they're seeing the best months currently in the history of their business. And these are leaders. One of them has been building this business for 13 years. And they had plateaued or dipped, and now they're seeing the best months they've ever seen. One of them has built a business for 30 years. And this has completely reawoken her organization. And she's saying she's having more fun now in her 30 years of building and seeing more success than she's ever had because she raised her own bar. So I will say, like, it is scary to do it, and that there will be fear at first, but man, the leaders will rise to the challenge. So the events, how did this change our events and our incentives and all of that? I would say the feedback that we started to get was this was the best event we've seen, the best events that we've seen for our annual convention and for our incentive trip. Because what people were saying oh man, I loved hearing new people on stage. It wasn't just hearing the same people every single time. We loved hearing the new stories, the fresh stories, the emerging leaders training, the young leaders training, those that have only been in the business for a year, but having a lot of success speaking and training, versus always hearing from the same group of leaders who have had tremendous amount of success over time. The freshness was the best part, because the law of familiarity is so true. You can hear the greatest person speak, but after so many times, it becomes white noise. And so that's what we heard. The field said there's a new energy at the event, and it's exciting, and those sort of things. And not everyone was that polished. Like, we had some people speak that were not polished. And you know what? That was great, because other people in the room were like, okay, you don't have to be polished like these incredible legacy leaders are to build a successful business. So the energy was terrific. Then on our incentive trip, many of the people on the incentive trip, and even one of our top executives, said, this is the best incentive trip we've ever had, because we had this mix of people who have been in the business for a very short period of time, having a lot of success fast, to those that have been in the business for a long time and who built large organizations. And you had this fusing of those two groups together. And every single person on the incentive trip was currently in the game building. So it was so positive. So I would say it brought energy, freshness, it brought new insights to our event, and even brought a little bit of real and rawness, because these younger, newer, emerging leaders are not the most polished. And that was actually probably the best part.
Oh, that's so inspiring. Again, that excitement, I'm sure, was very contagious. That growth is going to create the excitement. The excitement's going to create the momentum, and everybody wants to be on a winning team. So as they start to see that personal activity start translating into sales and volume for them, that's bound to be contagious across, all organizations within the field. I think that's such a powerful insight.
Are you ready to revolutionize the way your direct selling company accesses industry insights? Introducing the DSN Library Smart Search, an AI-powered tool that puts over 2,000 curated assets at your fingertips. From compensation trends to emerging markets, answers are just a click away. If you're already a DSN supporter, then you have access to Smart Search right now. If not, it's time to check out our updated program for 2025. Starting at just $1,000 per month, your entire company can get access to the channel's most comprehensive collection of education and insights available. Visit directsellingnews.com/supporter to see a demo of Smart Search in action and to learn how your company can become a supporter now. We also invite you to join us for the annual DSN Global Celebration and Spring DSU, March 25th through the 27th at the Irving Convention Center in Irving, Texas. From insights to action, this is the event that powers the future of direct selling. Visit dsnevents.com today for details.
I know on the corporate side too, it wasn't just here's this priority for the year, or this is our new focus, and shooting it out in an email or on a webinar or a single training. You really beat the drum about how over and over, and this is our focus. And I know internally we can get a little bit tired of saying the same message over and over and over again, but that's often what it takes to really help integrate a focus and an initiative like this. Can you talk about how this was basically the focus for every communication you had from the sales and field development team?
Absolutely. Well, one thing I was fortunate is I've had great mentors in my career throughout my industry. And I'll never forget the mentor that I had spent the most amount of time with in my career always telling me two things. He said, Stephen, direct selling and direct selling companies are ripe with two things that is kind of our Achilles heel. One is the launch and abandon. We launch something and we've been working on it for 3 or 6 months internally. We launch it to the field, and after 2 weeks, we're already bored with it because we've been thinking about it for 6 months. And so now we're on to something else. And the launch and abandon was something that he said, make sure that we don't fall trap to launch and abandon. And so I had that in the back of my mind when we went through this. And then another analogy he used to always tell me, which is, and he says, when we would do something, with the field, he'd say, from a baseball analogy, I'd rather score 1 run than leave 3 on base. I'd rather score 1 run than to leave 3 on base, which means instead of trying to get 3 or 4 things going, I'd rather just not get any of them moving. I'd rather just get one thing going and actually get it moving. And so what we did is every weekly leadership call that we do a weekly leadership call every month. It was the topic every single week. We brought on leaders who were recruiting and sponsoring to share their stories all the time. So those were the spotlight stories. We did trainings, monthly trainings, and all the trainings were geared around some sort of prospecting and recruiting focus, whether it was how to tell your story better, how to have a great one-on-one meeting, how to invite to an event, how to go do a booth, how to leverage social media to, attract people. Every training had a prospecting and recruiting focus to it. So, and then the recognition, every weekly leadership call, every month, we were trying to recognize those who are earning 3 and 30s. We did monthly sprint incentives geared around this whole concept of, personal production. So we did monthly sprint incentives. We did, 3-month incentives, 6-month incentives. So it became everything became about this. And we just reminded ourselves, we can't get tired. We can't get bored with this. We can't lose focus of this. I know we've said this to the field already 5 times. We got to say it again. The more that we talked about it, the field finally got more confident in it after we had beaten this drum 8 or 10 times. The first 4 or 5 times, it was really overcoming the fears the field had. And by the time we kept beating this drum and got to beating it 8 or 10 times, the field, that's when they started getting courage. And so, yeah, I would say the philosophy of don't launch and abandon was always in the back of my mind when we were doing anything with our field.
Avoiding that launch and abandon cycle is such an important philosophy and approach for companies. I know that it's something that I've been guilty of. Absolutely. Definitely getting excited about the next launch, the next product, the next market that we're rolling out. But I also think that in kind of beating that drum and in the constant reminder and focus from a corporate communication standpoint, because the field has seen the launch and abandon from corporate multiple times, it probably takes a while for them to build the trust saying, okay, this is going to be the focus. You are going to stick with this. You are going to support us in these activities and not change at the next conference or convention or something like that. So I think there's an important trust building aspect really to that as well. So with the focus on sponsoring and recruiting, the other side of the coin to that is obvious retention. To your point earlier, addition and subtraction. So this is definitely one of the greatest challenges and opportunities for all of our companies in direct selling. What is working, or what are some of the things that we can do to continue to improve, not just bringing people in the door, but keeping them longer, helping them see the benefits of the products over a longer period of time?
Absolutely. Well, I think when I think of retention, I think a couple things are critically important that I've always thought about. I call it the 3 R's of retention. I think first and foremost, there is no retention strategy or retention program or anything that is going to beat getting people results. Like, it doesn't matter, like your loyalty program, your rewards program, your subscription model, like all those models and plans and rewards and loyalty and all, they're all fantastic. But at the end of the day, if we can't get someone on our products and get them definable results that they want, they're not going to stay on subscription because we have a cool subscription model. No, they're going to stay on subscription because they get tremendous value and results from the products. Or the same thing with our business opportunity, right? Like, people are not going to keep pursuing the business because of these other programs that we have and all of this. Like, we got to get them results. So I think that's the one thing that we talk to our field a lot about, which is how important a new person is to them. And when you get a new person started, whether on product or in the business, like, that your personal relationship with them, that's the second R, relationship, is the most important element in this entire cycle. And the relationship you have with them, you need to leverage that to help them get results. Because if we get them results on products, they're going to want to keep using them. If we don't get them results on products, then it doesn't matter what else we have at the corporate level as far as these retention programs. It's going to be an uphill battle. So that's one thing that we talk about a lot, is making sure that you're spending time with your new customers, your new distributors, and being there to get them the results. You know, I remember seeing a study about direct selling that one of the things that people love the most about buying from a direct seller is the personalized experience that they get. And so I say, like, we need to lean in on that, and we need to use our relationships to get people results. So I think that's something that we talk about a lot, is being a very active and a very present sponsor. And that's why, like, I like to use the word sponsoring, not recruiting. This is not a let's line them up, sign them up type game. It is a, no, we're gonna get someone started and we're gonna sponsor them, because we have to have the relationship with that person and be able to be in their life enough to get them results. Because once you get someone results, you've got them. Like, once you get them results, you have got them. And so that's what we focus a lot about, is that first 30, 60, and 90-day journey for a customer or distributor is the most important journey of their entire cycle. And if you can do the hard work in those first 30 days, those first 60 days, first 90 days, you'll say the work becomes a lot less, and you may have a customer for a decade. And we have many distributors have customers for decades and decades. So that's the one thing that I would say when it comes to retention that we're really big on, and I'm really big on.
That was worded and presented much better than I ever could. I think you've really highlighted the formula for success that's in direct selling. We have to provide the value, so results, whether it's in the business opportunity or with the product, but really having that long-term personalized experience and relationships. That is our superpower. That's how we're different from so many other companies and channels, as we see so many companies moving in and understanding the value of selling peer-to-peer, whether it's affiliate or influencer or something like that. But having those long-term relationships where it's not one and done, that is really where I think we can shine, and where one of our, greatest superpowers really lies. So thank you for sharing all that.
Do you mind if I share one quick story
please.
about retention? I was just in Riga, Latvia for our kickoff event for our Northern European market. And I was speaking to one of our top leaders in Northern Europe. And it's about this whole concept of retention. And she said she had a team member, a mid-level leader, reach out to her and said, I need to go find new people. I need to go, because we've been beating that drum, right? So I need to find new people. Where can I find new people to add to my team? And the leader said, listen, I'm all for that. And we'll talk about that. But the leader asked, do you mind if I ask you a question? How many existing people are currently a part of your team? And this mid-level leader said, I don't know. And the leader said, the high-level leader said, well, why don't you look real quick in your back office and just let me know, how many people do you have? And so she went and looked, and she said, I think she said something like, I got 52 people in my team. And she said, you know what? We're going to go find some new people. But I bet there's many of those 52 people that need to be followed up with or reached out to. Long story short, she had not really touched any of those 52 people in a long time. She went back, and within 1 week, she had 6 appointments set up to follow up with inactive people in her existing business, because they wanted to get started back on product again, or they wanted to get started back in the business. So that just kind of highlights, that's where the retention piece, that's where the magic is. It's the relationships.
Absolutely. And I think it also helps highlight where growth can come from. It's not always the new, even though that has to be a focus. But one of the greatest assets that any company has is its existing customers, or even former customers, former brand partners, and helping to have them engage more or to increase their average order value or the LTV. I think that is such fertile ground for all of us. And there's ways we can do it on a personal basis. I know from marketing automation, there's a lot that our companies can do to really help elevate that as well. One of the things I've been so impressed with you and the company is identifying what's working in the field and then standardizing and operationalizing that across the company, across different groups. What have you found are some of the most effective way to kind of identify some of those best practices and then get them shared across teams and across markets?
Yes. So, one of the things that we like to do is, and we are a very global company. We operate in over 50 countries around the world. I get to spend, half my time in North America and half my time with our European team. One of the things that we have to look at for our company is okay, is if what's working in one market, is it really going to be something that could duplicate into others? And so we have to look at that and we have to make that decision first. And then if it is, one thing that we do is we have enough monthly and weekly communications with our field and our field leaders that when we find a new insight, and I'll give you a practical example, when we find a new insight, we are big on cross sharing that amongst markets and amongst teams. And so what we try to do is and I try to do this for Europe and North America, is if I see something working in one market or one team that would work in another market with another, I make sure that there's an avenue to cross share that. So for example, I was just in London this weekend at our kickoff event, and there's a training that was done there. And I was there taking notes, and I'm like, I've never heard this before. This is phenomenal. And I was thinking to myself, everyone needs to hear this. Well, today I'm back in the US. We had our North America leadership call, and that was the topic for our North America leadership call, was from the leaders of things that we learned from our leaders in London that's working there that would absolutely work here. That was fresh, and the feedback today was incredible from our leaders in North America about some new actions they can take in their business. So yes, and I try to keep the field development team in Europe and North America in close communications. And so they do share best practices amongst one another to then share in different markets. And we even do a little bit of sharing field development team members in different regions. So I'll have, our field development director for North America is going to go over to Europe and going to speak over there and get to share insights and stuff. And we do the same thing with the field. So for example, we've got a webinar for Europe in February with one of our most successful leaders in North America, who's having a tremendous amount of success to start the year. Just unbelievable amount of success that they're seeing. We're having him jump on a webinar in February to speak to all of our European leaders because it'll be really relevant for them. So we are looking for ways to cross share.
And how does that, what's the impact of that internally amongst field development groups at corporate? So, you're responsible for North America and Europe. Do you work really closely? I know you just mentioned that you bring others from other regions over from a cross training, but what about from an alignment of priorities and alignment around the focus? Does that happen globally? Does it happen kind of organically? I'm curious how that works there.
Overall, globally, our big focus point is still all about the addition of new. And so that is a constant amongst Europe and North America that I'm driving with our field development teams. Then what I think I do is as you start to get into different markets, of course, in Europe and stuff, there are different challenges. There's different realities. There's different things. Then we get a little bit more granular with each specific field development team member and the market they work with. So big picture, we kind of keep the same focus point. Then when we get to localized level, we do get a little bit more granular and we get a little bit more, we change strategies slightly depending on the market.
That's great. I know the company's also put a big emphasis around technology, especially AI. Can you share a little bit about how the company is leveraging technology and AI in field development?
Great question. One of the things, as you can imagine, when we're been in business this long, we're looking for ways that we can improve and get better and those sorts of things. One of the biggest focus points for us as a company is enhancing our technology and our digital offering. And so I would say like the biggest thing that the company has done is really made an investment bringing on a new VP of IT, a new VP of global IT, and a new VP of digital. And they're really working together to really bring in and elevate all of our, systems, our digital offerings, our websites, our enrollment flows, all of those sorts of things. And then layering in, of course, as we move forward, layering in, technologies like, AI and that sort of stuff. And so I would say kind of like they've been on board about a couple of years now. And so they've been working on a roadmap for really enhancing our digital footprint. So I would say kind of we're in the absolute middle of that journey right now, but we're making an incredible amount of progress. We're launching actually a lot of new things coming up this year. Like for example, in North America, we've launched some new systems across Europe. It's also a little challenging when you've got 50 plus markets and all of these different,
Absolutely.
countries. So it takes a little bit longer, I feel like, to implement things because it's a global mindset. But yes, improving our technology and incorporating elements of AI will absolutely continue to be part of our focus and part of our CEO's vision for the company. I would say from an AI perspective, a lot of our field is using AI tools to help them, whether on social media and that sort of stuff. And that's just really them finding these tools that allowing AI to help them, through using social media and stuff, and then sharing that with one another. We as a company have not really done that for them yet on the field development side.
Yeah, they're able to identify tools a lot of times and implement them a lot faster than we are at corporate. So I think it's always important to look to the field, which I know your team is the great conduit for. So looking at the results, we've touched on the fact that these have been some of the highest sponsoring and enrollment years in the last few years. Can you talk a little bit more about the results and the impact of these field development efforts on the overall company and its growth?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I did want to mention, because I think it's so important as we talk about the results and we talk about this focus on prospecting and sponsoring, that a lot of people have asked me over the time is like, okay, well, tell me, are y'all really focusing on like social media? Like, is that what you're trying to use to drive this, addition to the company, this sponsoring focus? Or are you, is it just in person or whatever it is? And I wanted to talk about when it comes to results, something that a leader told me about a year ago. And it's something that we have had this mindset. I asked this leader, I said, hey, tell me, because I wanted to pass this insights along to other leaders in our company. I said, what are you doing that's working for prospecting and sponsoring? And she said, Stephen, it all works. And I said, what do you mean? She said, Stephen, it all works. She said, I know you're trying to get me to say social media is the thing and you've got to do social media. And she goes, social media works. Or Stephen, you're trying to get me to say it's all about in-home events. She goes, Stephen, in-home events work. She goes, what I've seen and I'm learning right now is it all works if you work it. Because she said, let me tell you about who I brought on recently on social media. Let me tell you about the event I had in my home last Thursday. Let me tell you about this online Zoom I did and all these kind of things. So that's one of the things I wanted to mention about the results. We're seeing it in all different categories. We see people winning on social media and using that. We've seen people have incredible results over the last couple of years at booths of all places, like really working for them. We've seen people really getting back into homes and traveling to do events and seeing great results. So I want to say when it comes to the results, like the actual activity in the field, I now take her philosophy that it all works. You just got to help the leaders find what works best for them and give people an avenue to chase any of these endeavors that work best for them. But as the results that we've seen is, yeah, I would say 2022, 2023, those are two of our best years in NeoLife in North America when it comes to the number of new people joining NeoLife as customers and distributors that we've had in the last at least 14, 15 years, if not further back than that. That, 2022, 2023, even larger than obviously the COVID bump year of 2020 that I know a lot of companies saw, a really large increase in their businesses. Still 2022, 2023. And I really do believe it's because we had this singular focus and we had this megaphone. So yeah, so the results are there and we're not going to take our foot off the gas with this focus either.
I want to circle back to a couple of things you mentioned. I love the idea of it all works. We do often look for the next new thing to really amplify our efforts or the efforts of the field. But it is important to have different tools in the toolbox. Each play such an important role and each work for different people for different reasons. We all have different strengths. I loved hearing about The fact that booths were even working. I love that still, as we continue to advance so much, a lot of it is always still back to the future, that there's elements that have always been there that we shouldn't be afraid to kind of reach back and grab some of the tools we might have used before, because you never know, they'll continue to have a really important impact. And I think it's so inspiring to see the growth continue and to have the example of NeoLife and other companies where after 67 years or within, in their sixth decade, they're still continuing to see incredible growth. That sends such a powerful message for all of us in direct selling. So a couple more questions. You've been super generous with your time. So where can people start? What advice would you have for other execs or companies looking to elevate what they're doing in relation to field development?
Yeah, I think the first thing that any company needs to do, or in a department like field development needs to do, is collectively with the field development team. And of course, you have to get, I think, the executive, the CEO buy-in is, I think, figure out, okay, what is like the one thing that, going back to my analogy, like, hey, we're going to stop the run. If we don't do anything else, we're going to stop the run. We're going to load up the box. You cannot run against us. Like, we've committed that we're going to stop the run. So I would say figuring out, like, what is that one thing that is the focus that you are not going to have a launch and abandon strategy to, that you're going to sell out to. Now, I also would say it needs to be important that whatever that focus is, it needs to be something that is going to move the needle and something that matters, because you don't want to have this one focus on something that is ancillary or not that important. I think we all can agree that when we decided it was going to be on sponsoring, then that is one of the most important aspects of a business. So we knew we were safe that if we have this focus, it may not be the perfect focus, but it is a very important foundational focus. I could see some companies that may want to have a focus of, maybe you have a core rank at your company. That is a level that is kind of very important. It's a rank level that people, when they get there, they get locked into the company, and it's a really important position. I could easily see somebody making, hey, that's our focus, is we are going to focus on growing the number of these people at this level and things along those lines. And we've talked about that, and we will probably at some point turn a focus towards that as well. We still see sponsoring is so important for us, but you got to pick a focus that's going to move the needle. And then I would say you got to get everyone aligned on that is the focus.
Well, the results definitely speak for themselves. Last question, kind of zooming out a little bit. You've been in the channel now 14, almost 15 years. Where do you see direct selling as you look down the road, maybe in 5 years from now, and what excites you the most?
This won't make sense to people outside of direct selling, unfortunately. I've always said if you could bottle this up and you could sell this, then we'd be able to recruit the world. But the thing that it won't make sense to people outside of direct selling, but it gets me so excited, is I still think that at the end of the day, people are relational. At the end of the day, people want relationships. At the end of the day, people want connection. At the end of the day, people want friendships. They want to be a part of a group. They want to be a part of something with others. And, I think we have one of the best avenues to give people those relationships and those friendships and those connections. And I still think that is a deep wiring in all of us that people want and crave. And there's very few, if any, businesses that you can have that, or any kind of gig opportunities that create that outside of direct selling. So I think, like, I'm still so fired up about it, because of the fact that I think people are never going to lose the desire for that. Second is I also think people want purpose and meaning. And sometimes people are not fulfilled. They don't have purpose and meaning in what they do as a job or a gig or a side hustle or as a career. And they get involved in direct selling, and you see the rewarding work you get to do. I mean, I heard a story this weekend when I was in London of a lady who's just had such an incredibly challenging background, and how NeoLife and this opportunity has changed her whole family's life, changed her life, given her purpose, given her hope, that she would have never had if it wasn't for our industry. I still think that is the magic. And so I think people want purpose, people want relationships, people want connection. People want to do something that makes a difference in people's lives. They want meaning. And I think that we're the best game in town when it comes to helping people with that in an economic sense, in a business sense. And so I'm very optimistic about our future. I actually think that in the next 5 and 10 years, those needs are only going to get greater, and there's only going to be fewer and fewer places they can find it. And so our culture of companies, culture and community is going to absolutely shine. And that's why I say, if you could bottle up the culture and the community that direct sales creates, and if you could sample that, man, people would be joining, left and right, but they don't know that they're missing that. And they don't know necessarily that direct selling can offer that. So it's a process to show people and expose them to that over time. I'm optimistic because of that piece.
Well, it definitely comes through. Your excitement and passion for direct selling is definitely contagious. I'm just as excited about the vision for direct selling. Thank you for articulating what you're seeing coming down the road for all of us. It is a very exciting time. And thank you for sharing these incredible insights. I took an obscene amount of notes that I know I'm going to go back and refer to. And there's some concepts that you introduced today that I think it's important for all of us to continue to think about. I loved the idea of having that singular focus of redefining winning and being consistent and beating that drum within corporate and to the field. And also, again, really impactful for me was the idea of avoiding the launch and abandon cycle that I know we can easily get caught up in. And for me, one of the most important things was we talk about the field and the importance of leadership. And I love that you and NeoLife really help to focus that on leading by example, and not just by leading a team, but developing and having personal activity and showing others how it's done on a monthly basis, I think is really important. So, Stephen, thank you so much for your time. I know you just got back really late last night from a long trip overseas. Thank you so much for making the time for us today and for sharing these incredible insights. We look forward to seeing you at DSU, and please tell everyone there at the home office that DSN says hello.
Well, thank you so much, Wayne. And it's an honor to get to be on here with you and to get to hopefully add some value to this just amazing industry that we're in. And so I appreciate what you do by, sharing it amongst companies, because I know I've heard you and others say that we're not necessarily in competition with one another. There's more than enough out there for all of us. So I'm really thankful that you allow us to share our insights amongst the industry.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you soon. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for tuning in. Please take a moment to subscribe and give a 5-star rating and review to help Direct Approach continue to provide more candid insights and interviews for direct selling corporate executives. And don't forget to register for our upcoming spring events at dsnevents.com. Secure your spot now. Thank you for listening and supporting DSN and the Direct Approach podcast.